The moment I walked into the courtroom, my mother laughed under her breath, quiet, sharp, and cruel. My father just shook his head, like disappointment had become his favorite prayer. They didn't need to say a word. The room already believed them, that I was the failure, the liar, the burden they'd finally decided to bury in public. But they didn't know what I was holding. 7 years of silence wrapped in paper, waiting for one sentence to break it open. I caught my mother's eyes just long enough to see it, that flicker of fear behind her perfect smile. She'd spent years teaching me that silence was obedience. Today, it was my weapon. "My name," I said evenly, "is Celestine Holloway." And for the first time, the silence in the room belonged to me. I used to think Austin would always hum with the sound of hunger, the kind that dressed itself in ambition and called it progress. Back then, the city felt like a promise, all glass and motion, restless, determined to outshine its own reflection. I remember walking through the university halls late at night, lights flickering against the whiteboards still covered in diagrams. I believed in the work, in data, in proof, in the idea that good intentions were enough. But good intentions don't survive in families built on image. At home, my parents turned success into performance art. Every fundraiser was a sermon on empathy delivered over champagne. My mother's voice always carried just the right tremor of sincerity. My father, the patriarch with his careful smile, spoke of purpose while calculating margins. And Nolan, my younger brother, knew exactly how to sparkle under those lights. The prodigy, the heir, the one the cameras adored. I didn't mind the shadows. They were quiet, familiar. But when I realized my work had been filed under the foundation's name, the silence inside me split. My father called it a misunderstanding. My mother called it strategy, and Nolan called it family loyalty. By the end of that month, I'd become the rumor, the unstable one, the name whispered with pity in academic corridors. The locks on my office were changed, and the world carried on as if I'd never existed. I left without ceremony, just a few files, a flash drive, and my mother's final kindness. "Sweetheart, some things are too heavy for women to carry." Maybe that was true, but the truth she feared wasn't heavy at all. It was waiting, quiet, patient, and sharper than she could imagine. 7 years later, it came back to me through a stranger's voice. A veteran in El Paso, smiling faintly, said, "You should see this app. It saved my life." He showed me the logo glowing on his phone, the same symbol I once drew on a napkin over midnight coffee, the Holloway crest. That night, I packed one bag, booked a one-way flight, and turned off the light. Austin was waiting, and this time, I wasn't coming home to ask questions. The city hadn't changed much, still proud, sun-bleached, pretending to be pure. Austin had always been that way, beautiful from a distance and rotten beneath the polish. But the Holloway building looked taller than I remembered, its glass walls catching the sun like they wanted to blind anyone who dared look too close. I didn't walk in. Not yet. I needed to start somewhere. Truth still had a heartbeat. Dean Collins was that place. Once my department chair, now retired, half-blind, living above a used book cafe that smelled like mold and forgotten dreams. When he opened the door, surprise flickered, but only for a second. "I wondered when the storm would circle back," he said, motioning me inside. We sat surrounded by towers of old textbooks and journals. Dust floated between us like the ghosts of things we'd both lost. He didn't waste time. "Your father came to see me the week you were forced out, wanted me to sign off as witness for a new authorship transfer, called it a funding correction." He rubbed his temples, the lines in his face deepening. "When I refused, the foundation pulled 3 grants. I was gone by spring." My throat burned. "You knew what they were doing?" "I knew they'd rather destroy you than let you outshine them." He slid a folder across the table. The paper inside was yellowed, stamped with the foundation's crest. On the final page, a signature curved with elegant cruelty. "Lenora M. Holloway." Beneath it, one word, Witness. Everything tilted, the shelves, the light, his voice. My mother hadn't protected me. She'd erased me. Dean leaned forward. You can still make this right, but truth ages better than power. Celestine, don't let anger spoil it. Outside, the Texas heat pressed against my face. For the first time, it felt like the city itself was whispering all the lies it once helped my family hide. 3 days later, a message landed in my inbox from an address with no name. Hell LWI Proton Mail. Calm. No greeting. Just one line. Check the USB behind the painting. A.L. Only one person I knew signed her initials that way. Amara Levin. She'd been my quietest ally, the engineer who'd helped me code the neural interface that changed everything before she vanished the day my reputation died. The next morning, I drove to her old apartment. The door was ajar, drawers pulled open, files scattered, the faint sting of ozone in the air, as if someone had scrubbed the room clean of oxygen and truth. The painting still hung on the wall, a piece I'd given her long ago, gray neurons webbed with thin gold lines. Behind it, taped to the drywall, was a USB barely the size of my thumbnail. Back in my motel room, I closed the curtains, locked the door, and plugged it in. A single file blinked open. Voice Archive 2016 WAV. Then I heard her, my mother's voice, calm, composed, and colder than I remembered. Just delete everything under her name. Nolan will take the credit. The board can't afford another emotional episode from Celestine. The sound hollowed me out. I didn't cry. I hit record and spoke her words back, one by one, slower, steadier, a mirror of the crime. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. I tried calling Amara. The line was dead. By nightfall, a black SUV appeared across the street from my motel. Its engine ran for hours, headlights dimmed, but watching. They knew I was back. I backed up the audio to 3 cloud drives, labeled each one Truth, and wrote on a note card, Patience is power. I slipped it into my wallet beside my grandfather's photo. The only Holloway who'd ever believed integrity was worth more than image. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the hum of that engine still in my ears. But for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't afraid, because now I had her voice, and my silence finally had teeth. The ballroom smelled like polished wood and lies. I stood at the back as Nolan stepped on stage, smiling under the banner revolutionizing PTSD therapy through technology. Every slide mirrored my old work, my neural map, my color codes, even my variable tag still glowing in the corner, C. Holloway Alpha. I walked forward, calm and steady. Excuse me, I said, voice carrying through the mic. Could Dr. Holloway share his original data source? Heads turned, Nolan froze. My mother's pearls flashed like warning lights. Security, she snapped, just as the projector split, showing 2 identical graphs, one from my thesis, one from his app. Gasps rippled across the room. Nolan stammered. That's an early draft. No, I said. That's mine. The feed cut. Silence fell heavy. I didn't resist when guards led me out. My mother kept smiling, but her knuckles were white. Outside, sunlight hit like truth. Not victory, gravity. That night, my phone buzzed. Meet me where you used to teach. P.H. The psychology building smelled of chalk and old ghosts. Patrick Hale waited by my former classroom, my old student, now a federal attorney. He handed me a folder marked Federal Investigation, Holloway Foundation. They used your credentials for government grants, he said. With your data, I can prove it. I told him about Amara, the recording, the SUV. His face hardened. They're erasing evidence. If you're ready, we take this to federal court. I pressed record. My name is Dr. Celestine Holloway. My work was stolen and buried under my family's name. This isn't revenge. It's reclamation. Patrick slid me a subpoena form. Once you sign, he said, there's no turning back. I'm not turning back, I replied. I'm turning over. Thunder rolled outside, the sound of a storm remembering me. The city felt colder that week, as if Austin itself had learned to hold its breath. Patrick called just after dawn. Amara Levin's been found, he said. My chest tightened. Found? In her car, Ladybird Lake, still breathing, barely. By the time I reached the hospital, cameras already circled like vultures. A nurse whispered that she'd been sedated with an experimental compound, one distributed only to licensed medical labs. I didn't have to ask which one. When I entered the room, she looked like a figure carved from glass, fragile, translucent, fading. They came for the files, she rasped. I gripped her hand. You did good, Amara. I have the audio. Her lips trembled. They know. You recorded. My stomach sank. Someone had broken into my motel the night before. Drawers overturned. Nothing stolen. It wasn't theft. It was a message. Patrick met me outside. Exhaustion etched into his face. They're closing ranks, he said. Your mother's lawyers filed a motion accusing you of tampering. I almost laughed. They've been rewriting reality all their lives. At the lake, police tape fluttered. Patrick lifted a sealed bag containing a flash drive labeled Foundation Lab Reports. Amara must have hidden it. If this traces back to their lab, it's attempted murder. Thunder rolled overhead. Rain followed. Let them bury, I said quietly. I'm not digging anymore. I'm building. He frowned. Building what? A case they can't drown. Lightning split the sky, catching my reflection in the water. No longer my mother's mirror, but mine alone. 2 days later, an envelope slid under my motel door. White. Heavy. My mother's handwriting. Inside, a cashier's check for $2 million and a note written in that same elegant cruelty. Stop this. Celestine, come home. We'll rewrite the story. This time in your favor. $2 million. That's what she thought the truth was worth. I flipped it over and wrote 3 words. You already did. Then tore it apart and flushed the pieces down the sink. Patrick arrived soon after, without his badge. They suspended me. Conflict of interest. What conflict? He sighed. Apparently loyalty counts as bias, but we both know who pulled the string. He hesitated. I'll still testify, but from now on, you're alone in court. I didn't flinch. I've been alone longer than they know. That night, the power went out. The hallway flickered with weak light. A man in a gray suit stood at the far end, silent, watching. Then he turned and vanished. On the bed lay another envelope. Inside, a photograph of me outside the hospital, holding Amara's hand. On the back, written in red ink, stop recording. For the first time, I smiled. Fear only works on people still begging for permission to exist. I sat at the small desk, opened my laptop, and began to write my petition, proceed. Each keystroke sounded like a gavel. I listed every piece of evidence: audio, funding, chemicals, signatures. At 3 I whispered to the dark, "You taught me silence, Mother, but not how to use it for lies." I uploaded everything to 3 encrypted drives, labeling them truth, proof, and patience. Then I raised my glass of water like a toast. To silence, I murmured, the kind that finally makes noise. The courthouse smelled of marble and disinfectant, a sterile kind of purity meant to hide decay. Reporters crowded the steps, whispering my name like a sentence waiting to be written. Dr. Celestine Holloway, the daughter suing her own bloodline. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet tension. My parents sat at the defense table, regal and rehearsed. My mother's pearls gleamed like armor. My father's tie matched the foundation logo, still believing presentation could bend truth. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Dr. Holloway, are you representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor. No one knows the evidence better than I do. He nodded. Proceed. I played the first file, Voice Archive, 2016, EU. My mother's voice filled the room. Just delete everything under her name. Nolan will take the credit. Gasps rippled. My mother stood. That's manipulated audio. The gavel cracked. Sit down, Mrs. Holloway. Next came Amara's recording, her voice faint but steady. Mrs. Holloway ordered the data deletion. The lab used the sedative to erase traces of the breach. Patrick handed the judge the Foundation lab reports. The signatures clear. My father leaned close. You'll destroy us. I met his eyes. You already did. I'm just cleaning the debris. When the judge asked for my closing words, I rose. My family used silence to control. I use it to rebuild. This isn't revenge. It's reclamation of authorship, of identity, of truth. The gavel struck once. His voice was calm. I'll deliberate. But his eyes had already decided. Sunlight slid through the tall windows when he returned. The court recognizes Dr. Celestine Holloway as the rightful author and patent owner of the neural feedback program Holloway Neuro App. The Foundation, under Harold and Lenora Holloway, is guilty of fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice. My father's head dropped. My mother's pearls trembled. Nolan whispered, You won, but we lost everything. I didn't take anything, I said. I just brought the truth back to light. The judge's voice softened. Integrity builds legacy. Your grandfather would be proud. Then the gavel fell, not as punishment, but as release. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. Dr. Holloway, how does it feel to get revenge? I turned to them and said quietly, Justice doesn't shout. Outside, the sun blazed down on Austin, and for the first time, I didn't turn away. The news spread faster than breath. Every channel, every paper screamed the same headline. Holloway Foundation under federal investigation, fraud, forgery, and attempted cover-up. Within 48 hours, the board resigned. The foundation's accounts were frozen. My parents vanished from sight, their mansion barricaded behind flashing cameras and microphones. Patrick called that night. They're offering to settle, he said. Full payout, public apology, non-disclosure clause. I laughed. They still think silence is something they can buy. I declined. Instead, I wrote to the Department of Justice, transferring all awarded damages to a new foundation, the Holloway Institute for Ethical Research. Its mission, to fund independent scholars, especially women, whose work had been stolen or silenced. People called it noble. I didn't. It was practical. Revenge rots if it isn't turned into purpose. When I received the final decree, my name was printed in bold ink that would never fade. Dr. Celestine Holloway, rightful author and founder. I traced the letters with my finger and thought of my grandfather, the only Holloway who ever valued truth over power. Legacy isn't given, Celeste, he once said. It's built. And finally, it was. A year later, I stood again in a classroom, sunlight spilling across the desks. The university had invited me back, not as a guest, but as faculty. The same hall where my name had once been, scrubbed off the door, now bore a polished plaque. Dr. Celestine Holloway, Chair of Cognitive Ethics. Students filled every seat, their notebooks open, waiting. I wrote 2 sentences on the board. Silence isn't weakness, it's timing. Integrity builds legacy. They read quietly. I spoke about responsibility, not the kind printed in ethics policies, but the kind that keeps you awake at night, asking if what you've built can stand the weight of truth. When class ended, a young woman lingered near the door. My father says your story changed how he runs his company, she said. I smiled. Then I've done my job twice. That evening, I walked to Lady Bird Lake. The water shimmered under the city lights, soft ripples carrying reflections of everything I'd survived. I pulled a folded note from my pocket. My mother's handwriting. Let the men handle it. I let it fall. The paper floated, then sank beneath the silver surface. Some stories don't end with applause. they end in quiet. And sometimes, that quiet speaks louder than victory. It's been 2 years since the verdict. Austin has learned to forgive the Holloway name, or maybe it's just pretending to. The city loves its stories tidy and redemptive, as if justice can be folded into nostalgia. The old foundation building is gone now. In its place stands the Institute, its emblem carved into the stone facade. A single open circle, no initials, no ego, just space for honesty, for rebuilding. Every morning, I drive across Congress Avenue Bridge, the same road I once took to flee this city. Now it carries me home. The skyline looks softer somehow, less like judgment, more like memory. Sometimes I stop by the courthouse. The marble stairs are still there, cool and white in the Texas sun. I can still hear the faintest echo if I listen, the whisper of my mother's laughter that day, sharp and practiced. But beneath it now, another sound has taken root, my own footsteps, steady, certain. People still ask if I've forgiven them. I tell them forgiveness isn't about letting them go. It's about letting myself live. Anger burns too fast to build a life from its ashes. Peace, I've learned, is slower, but it lasts. At night, I light a single candle by my window, just as my grandfather once did when he stayed late marking papers. Its glow flickers against the glass, reflected in the lake below. Tiny shards of light scattered like truth, broken but still shining. The city hums outside, alive and restless, but my world feels quiet now. I glance toward the courthouse in the distance and whisper, "They laughed when I walked in, but they're silent now." And this time, the silence isn't emptiness. It's the sound of everything I reclaimed. It's peace,